Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk. Light Talk. Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Anne from San Clemente, California, and today we are going to talk about everything from touring to pitfalls on Light Talk.
And this is David from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
And sister!
Right on cue. Right on cue.
Wow. So here's a surprise. Anne is with us today.
Hi, everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, she is.
We've got to
Can't get rid of me now.
No. She's now a keeper. She's established herself in the whole.
She's got roots down in Lumen land.
She's a luminer. She's a luminer.
She's a luminous.
She's
Luminous.
a luminous.
You're luminous.
She's luminous.
I'll take that.
I think we're going to be the luminous group.
I'll have to contact the trademark office about that if we're going to change it.
Wouldn't that be a great name for an architectural lighting company? The Luminous Group.
Luminous Group.
Luminous
Let's start
group.
it.
I like that.
The Luminous
I like it.
Group.
Yeah. The Luminous Groupies.
We got to give up this podcast. We're not going to make any money doing this. So let's go ahead and.
Well, we could make money. Let's do a poll on the Light Talk page. Charge or don't charge. 99 cents. An
They
episode.
don't want to listen to stupid commercials. I mean, if I was a listener and I got a commercial coming up
We
from
don't have to do commercials. We can just 50 cents an episode.
50 cents.
Help the Lumen Foundation provide support to lighting students. That's what we do.
Wait. You're expecting our listeners to actually pay it money?
All right, 25 cents.
I mean, don't you know who these people are?
Would you do 25 cents an episode if the money was going to go to help fund student trips and tuition to lighting programs and or lighting conferences? Would you put in 25 cents an episode? I know if I probably would.
That's a hard thing because we might lose our student base.
That's
you know,
right.
'cause It just adds up. There's a lot of good episodes, but there's a lot of episodes.
There's a lot of
Okay, Ann, okay, 10 cents. What's
10
the lowest
cents.
you can do?
We only have a half dozen listeners. What are we going to make? I mean,
true.
forget it. I mean, come
That's true.
on.
Well, we could do a monetary inflation like China. No, I don't know.
You could do a donation if you wanted it. You know, like
We could call it a
put in
donation. Could we
$1
do that?
here. Yeah.
David,
They
you
do that
look
on
into
YouTube.
that. Will iTunes let you do a donate?
Listen,
thing?
it's best. We'll do what the Tappert brothers used to do. You just send us a $5 bill, right, in an envelope.
with a Hamilton ticket.
Right, with a Hamilton ticket, yes.
We used to do the Hamilton
I
ticket.
know.
I
Oh, that's what I
know,
brought
I
up.
know. I don't think Steve likes Hamilton, so we stopped doing that.
I haven't seen it yet.
He's off the show.
I don't think he likes Hamilton because we used to do that, and I wanted the Hamilton tickets, and none of our
He just thought it was
me
too
too.
much. He thought it was too much sticky.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, like this isn't? I mean,
I don't know.
come on.
That's
Careful
true.
of the shtick.
We're not going to trash Steve behind his back. He is off doing a show right
Behind
now.
his back, he'll be listening to the episode tomorrow night.
We love Steve.
I don't think he's going to listen to this episode, but we'll see. He may listen because Anne's on, right? But
right.
speaking of Anne, I know we really went off the rails there for a second, but speaking of Anne, she's filling in at the last second because Steve got called out. Thank you, Anne. And of course, we all know that she's going to be joining us at LDI as well. And speaking of LDI, we want to promote the LDI portfolio review for the students. And I'm going to let Anne talk a little bit about it because she's actually running this thing. Or you co-chair. Are you running it or are you co-chair? Or what? What are you doing with this thing, Anne?
Co-chairing, but the website says co-moderating, whatever that means.
Right.
So Brackley Freyer and I run the LDI portfolio and website reviews, they're called now. So that means you can bring your iPads or whatever and show us your website on there. It's for lighting and projection designers. It's Saturday at the LDI conference, October 20th, from 1:30 to 4. And all the Lumen brothers will be there, as well as lots of. We're limiting it this year actually to 10 exclusive, awesome designers for you to come see. So we've got top academics, we've got Broadway designers, we've got, people from major regionals. Like, it's really crazy who you get to show your portfolio or website to. So please
don't be
come.
intimidated. They should not be intimidated.
Don't be intimidated. They're there to help you. You should sign. There's a Sign Up Genius website to go to. If you go to ldishow.com and under events, scroll all the way down, and that's where you can find information. There's a Sign Me Up Genius thing to go to there and sign up for every. A slot for every reviewer, essentially, so that you can see everybody. So there's about 10 reviewers. But it's going to be great. Bring your stuff. People get a lot out of it. I've seen students. I've seen young professionals. I've seen people going back into the profession, all kinds of things. It's a great thing to come to. And you get a free floor pass out of it.
Yeah.
Wow, nice.
And it's free, right?
Yes.
They don't have to pay any money. I mean, how could you say no?
Right?
Well, if they can get to Vegas, if you're going to be in Vegas and you're going to be at LDI and you're young or mid-career, it's just valuable.
Yes.
Can I go?
Yeah, you're mid-career, aren't you?
I mean, really?
You're one of the reviewers.
Oh, am I? Well, no one's going to sign up for me. I mean, so what I want to sign, 'cause some of these people don't talk to me anymore. And I want to talk to them. Well, they just have decided that they don't want to talk to me anymore. So they have to talk to me if I sign up, right? So I'm going.
Yes.
I'm going to sign up, and I get a.
You're going to sign up as a young designer,
Yes,
right? It's really, David, that you want to reduce your, you want to get into a different generation. Let's be honest.
I would like to start over.
Maybe we need like the millennial review of all of our stuff. Huh?
Wouldn't that be
Yeah,
funny?
I think
That would
that's
be amazing.
They do it every day in class.
They do it every day. Yeah, we
Well,
get
there's
it every
that.
day.
Yeah.
They roll their
Class, they
eyes
look us up,
and they say,
right.
"Oi, Kavalt."
Let's also say that right after the portfolio reviews, the Lumen brothers and sister are going to be doing a live show. So you
Yes.
might want to, and I think that's going to be in a different room than the portfolio review. So please come to that and bring your questions.
Yeah, last year we were able to lock the doors and be able to keep those people.
Couldn't let anyone out. Yeah.
Yeah, but that room was too small with all that gray light bouncing around.
And also, we need to talk about our upcoming ERDA program. We're going to be taping that in a few weeks, and it's going to tell you guys basically what to prepare or give you advice on it. We're having some guests from ERDA, so that should be a really interesting program as well. We will announce the date and the episode number once we decide what we're doing. So, Anne has our first listener question today.
Okay. Wendy in Detroit writes, how do you go about lighting the set design? I never feel I get it right. Let's see. Where do we start? I am obsessed with lighting the set. And I tell my students that is, if you're going to win a Tony, that's how you do it, right? Because the people have to be visible. The people have to look a certain way. Yes, you can sculpt them and make them look great. But if you really want that power to your design or that pop to your design, it's all about lighting the set. And it's all about receiving that gift from your set designer. If your set designer gives you like something that's got slats in it or something that has a lot of texture or something, I always tell my students that is a gift that you've just received from somebody, because that allows you to make it look fabulous. And really all I do is I light the heck out of it. Like every angle I can imagine, I've got something on it. Say it's a backdrop, I've lit it from the top and the bottom and both sides, and there's clouds across it and texture all over it from the front and from the side and from below. And I just love lighting the set, and any integral lighting you can get in there, way better. I mean, that takes a lot of coordination, right? You and the set designer and the TD, but it's so worth it. Even if it's just a little piece of tape light or a little couple of birdies or something, like just something about integral lighting really makes the set amazing. So my rule is just light the heck out of it and make it as exciting and amazing as you can.
I would agree with everything Ann said enthusiastically. And I would also add this little sort of, I guess, tweak to it. So if you don't light the set, then because light is not paint and it doesn't stay where you put it, it bounces onto the set anyway, but that's uncontrolled. So you have no control over the value of the set if you're just relying on the ambient light. If you light the set as beautifully as Anne just described, then you can control the luminance differences between the performer or other areas of highlight and the background. And that control allows you to be more sophisticated from a compositional standpoint. I would also say it's really hard to make the set go away. So even if you have that control, set light off is still going to be present. But when you can control that, so you might want to set a high value level, like what's the brightest that set's ever going to be, what's the dimmest that set's ever going to be, and dim is certainly, but in relationship to the other parts of your composition, that's just an added level of control that lets you compose the whole stage, and give things what is sometimes called a hierarchy of brightness, depending upon what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's a great thought, like controlling your foreground and background.
Right.
And
exactly.
I just wanted to add that the ambient light theory that I've heard was sort of popular in the 60s and things, where it was realistic to light the people and the ambient light bounced up and hit the box set, for example.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that are like, but that's realistic. And I'm like, all right, but we're in a theater. Like, I come from a musical background. Like, I want to light the heck out of it.
I'm with Ann. Always have, unless you're out of fixtures and you can't.
Sure.
But I usually take the crappiest fixtures I have. Mm-hmm. I put the best fixtures on the people, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff that's sort of like that. Okay, it's just the set, and most of the set is vertical, so it doesn't need high luminance value.
Right.
Right. You just have to be touching it. I know David will have stuff to say about this too.
You guys really nailed it when it comes to practice. I'm going to talk about practicality here and reality, in the sense that if you don't like the set and you piss off the set designer, you will never work with that director again.
Yes.
Okay? Because the director is going to usually choose the set designer before the lighting designer, in a lot of cases, not always. And the director's going to say, and I'm thinking about using David to light the show. And the set designer will say, are you kidding? I don't want to work with him again.
True story.
And guess who wins and who loses? So that's the practicality involved. But, you're creating the atmosphere, and the atmosphere includes everything that's on that stage. You're creating what we call dramatic space. Not physical space. Physical space is what you see when you turn on all the work lights and you see the masking, you see the set, you see the chairs, you see old cigarette butts, you see the old confetti that was from 5 shows ago. You see all that stuff, right? But we create magic, and we create the dramatic space. And the dramatic space is what we light and what we don't light. And the set is there. So why not include it in the dramatic space?
Yeah.
And one thing that Stan and Ann said, that has such a nice ring to it.
It does.
One thing that Stan and Ann said about foreground and background is especially important when you're doing video. So all comes, the set is there, so create it. And speaking of video, by the way, did you guys hear that the Jesus Christ Superstar live in concert basically swept all the design Emmys?
I didn't.
Yes.
That's great.
And you talk about lighting a set. Al Gurdon in that show knew how to light that set, and that's foreground, background, beautiful touches,
background, subject. It's basically photography. It's composition. You have to think about that. That you guys, lighting designers, you are the DP of the theater.
Yeah.
Or cinematographer. You're deciding. All of that stuff.
The beauty of lighting that set, and we talk about lighting the set. Go watch that DVD, because what he creates in dramatic space is absolutely awesome. From the offstage lights that are cutting through all that scaffolding. It creates a space that goes on forever. And speaking of going on forever, watch the last 5 minutes of the show. Going on forever is me, obviously, but because
I'm a close second.
I do that, right? Okay, I'm filling in all Steve's time and Ann's time too. So sorry, guys. No, seriously, watch the last 5 minutes of the show and watch what he does during the crucifixion, and that is a moment that space looks endless. It looks like it goes off into infinity.
I call it sublime. It's a sublime.
It is sublime. It's beautiful, and it's great composition with light.
Carl in Atlanta asks, how about a few tips for my first tour? Well, the few that I've done, I guess my lesson would be the Boy Scout motto: be prepared. for the things that you can't even predict, like the worst case scenarios. I mean, I know that when I worked at Production Arts, every tour got 10% spare lamps. Sometimes some big tours even took a spare console because they weren't as stable as they are now. So there's a whole bunch of things about duplication, crewing correctly, having good advance information for the theaters you're going to. I mean, that's just a short list. What do you guys have?
My advice would be sort of boring adulty advice, which is save your per diem, right? There's all these stories of people drinking away their per diem. Don't do it. Make sure you save your per diem. People after tour have paid off student loans. They've bought new houses, like all kinds of things. So that's all I got.
Do a cruise ship where the food is free. You only have to buy the booze, and you could really sock your money away.
Never
Or
do
Vegas,
a cruise
free
ship.
food.
Never do a cruise ship. Every student that I have, and also I've had friends who've designed on cruise ships. Nightmare. Stay away. But
I didn't mean to shift the question off.
no.
of touring,
But speaking of touring, I did a lot of touring, but I was the guy on stage. I wasn't the crew, and I was a lot younger. And I must say that watching the crews, not the cruise, but the crews, they were young, right? And unfortunately, a lot of them did drugs. And this is my advice: if you're going to go on a rock and roll tour, never do drugs. A, B, get in shape. Get in shape. Crew, I mean, you
stamina,
do not want
back to my point last week, stamina.
But you got, even when you're young. And one of my programmers is that I use all the time is a guy named Andy Figueroa, and he's my programmer whenever I'm doing shows on the West Coast. And Andy was with Kiss, toured with Kiss for about 20 years. I mean, it's like unbelievable amount of. And he's still touring. And Andy is a programmer now, and he does all this amazing stuff. But he's told me stories about people who go on tours and did not take care of themselves.
And don't come back.
And don't come back.
Go on tour and don't come back. I think the reason I didn't do a lot of it, I had some opportunities to go out with Paul Simon and a few other bands, and I really wanted to be, I think I've mentioned this on the show before, one of my dreams back in the 80s and 90s was to be a Verilight programmer, but I couldn't kick the door down. But I think it probably saved my life. I mean, given who I was back in those days, had I gotten the opportunity to go on those tours, I probably would have really, really hurt myself. So I think David's point about sustainability and self-preservation is well taken. I think it's sort of different now. I think the companies who sponsored the touring have developed programs because they realized we were developing all this talent, and then people were getting burned out or unusable, so they realized it wasn't sustainable. So I think now the culture is a bit different. What do you guys think?
Well, I would say try to eat right, like in that same vein of, it's kind of like being in tech all the time. And we all know how awful we can eat in tech sometimes. So I think it's all about self-preservation and taking care of yourself. So I don't know if the newer companies are sort of, I don't know, protecting its employees in certain ways, but those are definitely things to watch out for yourself.
And don't get into trouble. I mean, relationships, occur, and it's a natural thing. And if they go, and I'm talking about relationships between crew members. And the problem with that is that if they go bad, you're stuck on that crew for the next year and a half with that person.
Right. So keep your relationships happy.
Keep your relationships and your own inner self happy. Now, I'm going to just shift this just a bit, because if you're designing for a tour, that's something totally different. So I'm just looking at the question saying, well, maybe he means designing for a tour. Maybe Carl means that. And if that's the case, you really need to be prepared for every single theater that tour is going to hit. And, again, remember that, yes, even though if this is a proscenium show, you can hang your lights on pipes. They're going to be close to where they're going to go. That's going to be somewhat consistent. Front of house is going to be totally different in every theater you go to. So you need to be prepared for that, for different throws, for different angles. That is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that back on, was it episode 67, which was one of my first ones with you? We talked about different A houses versus B houses and how you deal with front of house and stuff.
Yeah, let me throw something out there. I'm a big advocate for WYSIWYG software, which I know is controversial maybe in some sectors. But one thing I like about that software is it really has a lot of features designed specifically for touring. It has a feature called the road case, which lets you sort of create an inventory, swap inventory, see what your weights are, because it was really designed for that industry. So you might take a look at that as a software that sort of has a focus on the specific needs of touring lighting rigs.
Cool. Andrew in Scotland asks, what are some things I should avoid doing as a designer? We could go on for hours and hours and hours and hours. You should avoid not doing enough research. You should avoid arguing too much. I mean, we all have points of view. We're all artists, but we're there to support each other. And if a director has a very strong idea, it's the director's show. You need to figure out a way that you can support that idea and still support your ideas. It can be done. Believe me, we've the three of us have been doing shows forever, and we've hit situations like this, and some are more difficult than others. But if you're supporting each other, then the show's going to be better. The show's going to communicate to the audience better, and you're going to keep your career going.
Very good advice.
What you're saying, David, sounds a lot like this phrase that we use a lot. Build bridges, don't burn them. And that applies to artistically, relationship-wise, spiritually, emotionally. Always be thinking about, am I burning a bridge or am I building it stronger? And I think that's essentially what you're saying, and I agree with it.
Nice. I was just going to say, try to avoid getting stuck in design things that you do all the time. Like using the same colors all the time, using always the same angles all the time, all that sort of stuff. And I think for me, for example, and I think I learned this from my professor, Mitch Dana, in grad school, is to always use at least one new color for every show. So I'm always challenging myself with something new, and sometimes it's wonderful, sometimes it's a fail, but if 90 or 80% of your other color is something you trust, I'd say try something new just to get you out of your box,
Yeah. So and you're saying get out of the rut and
yes.
and experiment.
Yeah, because you'll
willing
get bored,
to experiment.
Right? You'll get bored, and then you'll burn out and lose your love of design because you haven't been pushing yourself enough and trying something new.
There's something exciting about that too. When you try something new, and it's great in lighting because if it doesn't work, you can pretty easily change it. But it sort of keeps it exciting for you. It's like, I'm going to try something I've never tried before.
Yeah.
And hey, and I'll learn something from that. And actually, we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes.
So true, unfortunately. You are listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers and sister. Light Talk is sponsored by...
This week, we have a new sponsor, Q Division of London. Ever have one of those horrible days in the theater when you would slowly lift your head from the production table and see the absolute mess you created on that stage? And then you'd ask yourself, did I really come up with that insane lighting concept? My God, that focus is a disaster. How did I let that go? And what was I thinking when I came up with the idea of contrasting Goldfinger yellow with Dr. No Navy? Didn't you wish that Sean Connery would magically show up in his tuxedo with all those cool devices to save your career from ultimate self-destruction? Well, from our friends at Q Division of London comes a new product for that stubborn and misguided lighting designer in you. Secret Change Agent 009. Secret Change Agent 009 is a new iOS app that works with any Apple-manufactured iPhone, iWatch, or iPad. Just start the app and it automatically senses all of your poor choices that need to be terminated. Upon activation, just sit back and watch as Secret Change Agent 009 reverses all those horrible decisions and replaces them with better ideas from our popular Real Designer libraries. And to keep you from continuing to look like a hack, our exclusive and patented Tesla coil delivers a 240-volt shock to you to ensure you never make those decisions again. Look for the image of Oddjob on your screen. Only then will you know that you are using the authentic Secret Change Agent 009. Secret Change Agent 009, making all your bad decisions seem like a distant memory.
Is that on Amazon? Because I could use one.
I don't know what Oddjob is. What is Oddjob?
Okay, you have no right then doing this if you don't know who Oddjob is.
I don't.
Did you watch Goldfinger?
Yes, but a long time ago, not
Do
recently.
you remember the henchman of Goldfinger was Oddjob? He had the hat with the steel rim.
Yeah, I do know. Now that you mentioned it, sure. Was that the hat that he could throw like a nunchuck?
Like a frisbee. He'd throw this
Like a
thing.
frisbee, right.
And the great scene at the end of Goldfinger, as the atomic bomb is ticking down in Fort Knox, he like throws his hat at Sean Connery, and the hat gets lodged between two bars. And,
Yes.
and he goes to grab it, and Sean Connery takes this open 240-volt circuit and presses it against one of the bars, and it fries Oddjob. One of the greatest moments in movie history.
Okay, and now back to light talk. So Rebecca in Ohio wants to know, what is your favorite type of space to work in? Well, that is an easy answer for me, Rebecca. It's proscenium, proscenium, proscenium. I am a Broadway baby. I love musicals. Like, for me, I feel like you can do so much more fun. So much more fun lighting in a proscenium because only, basically one of the angles needs to be for visibility, right? And the rest of it can be color and fun, and you can hide a bunch of magic. And I just feel like there's more flexibility than in an arena or a thrust where you have to worry about visibility from so many more sides.
I would, from a theater perspective. Well, first of all, for me, at this point in my career, I'm looking for the one I haven't worked in yet. So that would be my favorite at this point. I love the challenge. I think Anne is correct from a lighting artist perspective. The proscenium is the ideal space for me, also for all the reasons that she mentioned. But I want to work in like weird spaces. I want to go into like in my consultancy. I love renovations, which are more interesting to me than a new building coming up ground up, because it's you sort of know what the ground up situation is. We know what works, and you build that building, and it's all about finishes and uniquenesses that you can sort of get into it. But I love to do a renovation because, okay, that's a challenge. How am I going to make this envelope or this space work well? Same thing with lighting. So I think it pushes me creatively to come up with odd solutions to odd problems. But that's so because I'm old and I'm sort of I'm like, I want something I haven't done before, right? It's a different sort of, that's just where I'm at. So, but I agree with everything about Anne. For the proscenium was sort of designed for that, to create the magic, and you can't beat it for that.
Yeah. Prosceniums are the easiest space to light in because of everything Ann said. You can basically hide things. You can hide shin kickers. You can hide the light falling off, wherever it goes. Until LumaSuck does come into general production, we're not going to be able to create a light that travels 30 feet and stops. So that light goes somewhere, and it's going to go off into the wings or go up into the up toward the grid, all that. And that's great, and I love proscenium. I work in prosceniums everywhere, okay? But my favorite space to work in has nothing to do with lighting. It has to do with theater. And that is why I love small theaters that are usually in thrust or arena, because it is so intimate. You can get away with very little bit of lighting. You're right on top of the actors. And I love that intimacy.
I agree with you, Dave. We have a lovely little black box where you can be 8 feet from the actors. It's great. But in terms of the magic, I was just showing my students the stuff we have in our little light lab, and you guys have probably used this before. I think Broadway uses it a lot. And Rose Brand makes a fabric called Merlin velour, which is like the blackest black you can get. It's like a 40-ounce velour. And man, it's almost like Vanta Black. I mean, it just sucks up the light like a sponge. Oh. And I've got a small piece of it. We use it as our backdrop in our light lab. And our light lab is tiny. It's almost like a shoebox, but we could be 10 feet away, and it's just, any bounce light just doesn't come back out. It's almost like LumaSuck. Wow. So take a look at that. It's in there. I'm sure. I don't know if they still call it Merlin velour, but I think it's called Merlin velour after the magician.
Since we're talking about fabrics now, and I think it's really interesting because it goes back to a question earlier about what to do as a lighting designer. One thing that just came to mind is that whenever you're working on a show that is using legs and borders, but especially legs, never hang them in fullness.
Yes.
Never, ever hang them in fullness.
It looks like high school.
It looks like high school,
Right.
and when they're in fullness, they're going to pick up highlights. Even if the light's not hitting it directly,
Right.
it's going to hit up bounce lights.
Yep.
And I'll tell you one thing that they do in Europe and some of the larger opera houses here in North America is when they use hard legs. They use velour-covered hard legs, and even better, they camphor the edge, the onstage edge, so that it's a razor-thin edge, meaning that it camphors out to whatever the thickness of the flat is. Let's say it's an inch thick, but at the very end, it actually angles into a razor edge, which means
To zero,
to zero, so that any light that's bouncing from the side will only be picked up by that very, very thin strip and not like a 1 inch wide edge. Yes, it costs more money to do that, but it will make your show look so much better, and it creates that magic. I'm gonna check on that fabric you talked about, because we can use that
Merlin.
Yeah, that Merlin stuff, because
It's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavyweight. It's
Right.
like 40 ounce. I think it's 40 ounce material. And I was going to say, as you were talking about the hard legs, I was bursting to say hard legs. Yes. In fact, I worked for years at the Joyce in New York, and it doesn't have a fly space, and it was always done with hard legs. And that's when I realized, that helps the side lighting so much. I don't know if they chamfer the onstage edge. That's just another level of refinement to that concept, and it's brilliant, David. Absolutely.
Yeah, when I first saw it in London, actually, and I think it was at the Royal Opera House. I'm sure Anne could confirm that. No, actually, because the legs were part of the set, and the set designer made sure, because whenever we do shows together, because this is one team I work with, he always does that. And of course,
Nice.
you hear a lot of complaints. It's going to cost an extra $500. Yeah, but it looks great. It looks great. And I'm going to just send a message to all students out there, whether you're set designers and lighting designers, make sure you pay attention to the masking.
Yes.
For some reason, set design students always think that masking is an afterthought, and it is not. It is probably the most important item that you have to look at, because all the work you do is going to be ruined if you have bad masking. So you have to pay attention. And lighting design students, make sure if there's no masking on that plan, you should say, where's the masking? And you work with the set designer, because I work with set designers all the time where the masking's placed. And that is just really, really important, because we have to hide things, especially obviously in proscenium theaters. So unless the director says, I want no masking, I want to see backstage and all that stuff, cool. But even then, you can mask things very subtly. Like if there's one electric you don't want to see, there's a way you can hide that. And all that is very, very important to understand. So that it's not an afterthought, and don't roll your eyes the next time I come up to you during a tech and say, why do I see the 7th electric? Or I could see people backstage. I could see people walking backstage. If you do that professionally, you'll be fired. You will not work again, You have to watch all this stuff, because the one thing that most artistic directors and general directors hate is seeing people backstage. It shows that you're not thinking about it, and you need to think about everything.
I'd love to show a picture of that chamfer idea to my students, because we were actually going to do a whole talk on masking soon.
Yeah, that's a level of detail that I usually don't cover, but I certainly see the value in it. Yeah, great stuff on the trip.
Yeah,
And
otherwise
I'll see
you
if I
see
can,
these lines.
find the post to the Merlin lure as well.
Yeah, please do. And otherwise, you see these vertical lines, I mean,
Yes.
it's not as bad as fullness. Don't hang masking in fullness. In case we hadn't mentioned it, don't hang masking.
By the way,
in
what do you think
fullness.
about hanging masking in fullness, David?
I don't think you ought to do this. I think, if you're doing high school stuff, I guess it's okay.
Why do the high schools do it? Why do
I
they
don't know
do
why
They don't know
anybody
better.
does it.
We don't specify when I consult on, and I do a lot of high schools. We don't specify fullness on the legs. And we can always you can always tie fullness into it if it's sewn flat. So
Yeah, you can always do it fullness. But I think I know why. It's because every drafting student, stage design student, learns how to draft legs with that stupid fullness line.
I hate that.
Stop
but
doing it.
But the
Draw
tool
it like a
both in
flat.
Vectorworks and Wig lets you change it from flat to fullness.
That's one extra step that they don't know about or don't take. You have to just keep it flat. Draw it like a flat.
I
Just
still draw a
it like
rectangle.
little flat.
Yep.
Yeah, rectangle.
Yeah, you draw
Yeah,
a very
yeah.
thin rectangle, right? And you label it. Legs number 1. Legs
All
number
right,
2.
take us out. Let's go.
I'm not going out here. That Hammond organ solo in the background tells us that once again you've spent an entire morning, or at least 45 minutes, listening to Light Talk. Don't forget to visit our website at lighttalk.org. And be sure to follow us on Facebook on our ever-growing Light Talk Facebook group page. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Lumen, brother, and sister insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
In other words, stop and do not burn any bridges.
Or hang things in fullness.
Never hang things in fullness.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen people, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and San Clemente, California.
And be sure to tune in next week when we discuss multi-console networks, what's in your Pelican case, do I need a degree to work in the USA? It depends on the degree. And let's talk about scanners.
All that and the new sponsor, Light Talk, broadcasting questionable luminosity knowledge and humor around the world.
We'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Light Talk.